My friend Danny Hinkle has, well, he hadn't patented it, but it's a patent phrase with him. Often, as people depart, and a lot of times in just messages to people, he'll this phrase, "Keep on keeping on." Well, yep, that's a worthy phrase. There are times when just keeping on excuse me, might be the best, most noble, most honorable, most whatever. I mean, I'm kind of out of adjectives for it, but it's the best thing you can do. I think it's the often just keeping on is the most God honoring thing that we can do. But there are a lot of times when, boy, you get weary, you get tired, you get discouraged. It just feels like I'm at the end. I'm just done. When that happens, and it happens to me, actually, it happens to me more often than I would like. When it happens to me, that's when I need to drop back for a pause. Now, it might be, there's several things that could put me there. One is, I need to seek out a friend, a grace friend, and just hang out, right? Just absorb a little bit of their grace into my life. But you can't always do that. I'm grateful God has put several of those kind of grace people into my life, and just a few minutes of hanging out with them, it puts grace back into me. And when grace gets pumped back into me, then I have hope. It just works that way for me. This is a weird thing, but sometimes what I need to do is go take a 30-minute walk. Just get my heart pumping blood back through my body and see if I can get some more blood up to my brain. Because sometimes it's just I've just slumped down into a little bit of a trough physically, physiologically. Sometimes I need to go to bed. I just need to turn off the phone, turn off the rest of my devices, and kind of turn my brain off and go to sleep. Maybe I need to sleep 8 or 9 or 10 hours, or maybe I just need 30 minutes. There are a lot of things that are possible for us when we get that feeling that, man, nothing's working here. I'm really tired. I'm worn out. It is not a sin to feel worn out, but it's not wise to let ourselves stay there. So, okay, why am I talking about that? I mean, because this sounds like, How to Have a Happy Life by Stevie Boyd. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what John was talking about in 2 John. We're in verse 9. Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teachings of Christ does not have God. See, we talked about we've talked about the running ahead thing. We've talked about where do you go for the teachings of Christ. And now I want to talk today about how do you continue in the teachings of Christ. I don't think you can consistently continue in the teachings of Christ by accident. Now, you can by default and by accident continue in bad habits. But have you noticed in your life that is really, when it comes to good habits, healthy habits, holy habits, you got to be intentional about that. Well, when to continue in the teachings of Christ, first of all, you got to know what those teachings are. And then the second thing is you have to, with intention, arrange your life and your behaviors so that they conform to the teachings of Christ. I don't want to be in love with anything I thought up, but I do have a real high value for one of the ideas that really comprises my life's mission. I've shared it with you. I'll say it again, though. My mission in life is to help people find their best life. And you find your best life when you discover God's design and you arrange your life around it. Okay, something that does not always happen here is if you discover God's design and you arrange your life around it, you are not always going to be happy, happy, happy. Especially if you have my temperament. Pardon me. My temperament is I have spikes of happiness, but I tend to live down here in the, okay. You know what I'm saying? Probably not. I didn't say it very well, but there are people, I have friends who they just live up here. Life for them is good, and they easily and quickly see the good. Life for me is life, and I have to look for the good. Well, anyone, I don't care whether you live up here or you live down here, really, either way, both ways. If you're going to continue in the teachings of Christ, you've got to be intentional. Now, you can be anal, and that's not what I'm talking about. You can be legalistic, and that is way not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being intentional. Jesus summed up his teaching in one phrase: love one another as I have loved you. Okay, there it is. But boy, is that a deep well or what? I mean, that is deep as the ocean. What does it look like to love other people the way Jesus loves me? Big deal. Big deal. Takes a lot of thought. I believe that for most Christians, we have this, we get the thing that Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. We get that. But we have not done enough deep thought. We haven't unpacked it enough to be able to say, and this is what loving someone else the way I am loved by Jesus looks like. One of my go-to questions in life and in counseling is, what does that look like? Because there are a lot of times when we can give a pretty substantial moral, even biblical answer to what should we do, right? What should be next? Or what is right for me to do? How should I rightly relate to another person? Got pretty good answers for that. But when I this happens all the time in my own life and in my counseling, when I ask, so what does that look like? Long pause, thoughtful silence. Because figuring out what does that look like is sometimes more difficult than, running it back to, okay, this is the command. You don't continue in the commands of Christ until you identify what the commands are, and you have to answer the question, so what does it look like to do that? How do I do that? Back to his primary command. Love one another as I have loved you. There's a saying that is very haunting to me, and here's how it goes. You love Jesus as much as you love the person that you love the least. Man, I hope that's not true, because there are people I don't love very much. And is that the mark for how much I love Jesus? Might be. Could be. So how do I love them more? Sorry, don't love them anymore. But man, have I put in the effort? I think that's the wrong question. Because I don't think what Jesus was saying was love each other as much as I love you. I don't think that's what he was saying. I think what he's saying is, think about how I have loved you. Think about the in spite of. Think about that I love you even though you can be very unlovable. I love you, and I express my love through how I behave toward you. That love one another in the ways that I have loved you. Well, then it's not a matter of, do I love others this much or this much? There are people that my depth of love for is way, way more than other people. Listen, I love my wife, Debbie, my 3 daughters, their husbands and their children, my brothers and my sister. That's the circle. I love them more than anybody. And the reason is they are central to my life. See, it's not about how much you love them. You got to love that person you don't even know. You got to love that person who's riding in Portland. You got to love the whole every athlete that took a knee. You got to love them. That's how you got to love them. I don't think so. I mean, I can't, right? Love is a feeling. It's an attitude. Ultimately, if we're going to let Jesus be the example, then love is ultimately a verb. Love is doing. I'll come back to my favorite definition. Love is doing for the other person what they really need. I don't always know what they really need. So sometimes for me, it comes down to love is doing for the other person what I can, the best I can, as I best understand what they need. If I really want to understand what they need, I have to get into their life. I have to know them. I have to ask a lot of questions, and I have to observe their behavior. I have to observe their life. I have to listen to what they tell me is important to them. I don't know that. See, I'm probably not going to be able to do that for the rioters in Portland. I'm probably not going to be able to do that for the athletes to take a knee, but I can do that for the people who are in my life. And that, I think, that's the context for continuing in the teachings of Christ. Whoever continues in the teachings of Christ. Now, the negative side, and that's what John, man, get your apostles right, Steve. Verse 9, anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teaching of Christ does not have God. That's the negative side of this whole thing. And that suggests what John writes next. Whoever continues in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. Now, he doesn't talk about the entire Trinity here, but the implication is when we're talking about God, there is the Father and there is the Son. And John says, when you continue in the teaching, you have both the Father and Son. Now, do you continue in the teaching to get both the Father and the Son? No. But as we continue in the teaching, we demonstrate the presence of both the Father and the Son in our lives. Well, time's up. We'll have to come back next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.